Andy's overview to begin the day was, by my lights, wonderful. It wasn't just an overview of some ideas of mine, it was a clarification and extension, and I just want to say thanks. As boy, may all of you have somebody treat your ideas with the constructive respect and clarity that Andy treats mine. I'm very grateful to him. And grateful to you all for this whole meeting. It's been great to be here. It's been a wonderful time. Okay. Quoting from Andy, a partial victory for qualia realists, just like God's cats. I entirely agree with that. Sure, colors are real, and cuteness is real. It's just that you have to understand that these are properties that are relative to particular observers, namely people like us. And the illusion is when you start thinking that they're independent of that. And that is a kind of illusion. Another question that was raised was, what does the extra, as in higher order thought model, what does the extra get you? And as Andy said, it explains our decision to say things we say, and mean them when we say them. That's important, otherwise you can get stuck with a sort of silly behavioristic view of what saying things comes to. So that's all I'm going to say about Andy, I think. Let's see what the next one. Oh, yeah, Van Wiese. I already made my main comment. I suggested that the eye test that we've all gone is a nice example of a possibly of probabilities being, as it were, phenomenologically accessible in our own experience as the quick temporal succession of rival views. It also occurred to me that he had a slide up from the Cohen et al. Paper, which talks about summary statistics of the non-foveal part of vision, and that's another case where I think if you consider it right, you might consider that direct phenomenological evidence of probabilistic content in phenomenology. So that's something to think about. All right, Marta, another wonderful talk. I mentioned this to her. She spoke several times about the laziness of figuring out, and it strikes me that this is, first of all, a lovely way of characterizing a serious issue, even a serious ethical issue, that we have to develop ways of having quality control of these systems so that we won't fall for lazy, shortcut identifications, discriminations, decisions of these systems. I don't know how you test for how you launder out laziness, but I think that's a very important topic to think about, if I understand it correctly. Okay, Carl Friston. I learned a new term today, epistemic foraging, which I really like. Thank you, Carl, for that. And I've been doing some epistemic foraging, inspired by him. And I talked with him just during the coffee break, and he said he thought that, what I needed in this wrap-up was some more equations. And so I found this will only take me about 15 minutes. I hope you're all ready for it. Actually, I'm going to go a little faster than that. This is my caricature of what I used to call the walking encyclopedia. That's where we were in cognitive science not so long ago, before the sort of revolution that we've got now. And there's the belief box, and belief fixation, and world knowledge, and the planning and action. And this, what was this? It was a sort of Cartesian intellectualist fantasy about how agents worked. They deduced from an giant set of axioms of world knowledge. They deduced what to do, and they deduced when they had to look out about falling over a cliff, and it was all done in the style of good old-fashioned AI. And I don't want to diminish the importance of this. I think we had to go through that period. I think we had to learn that a lot of that low-hanging fruit wouldn't work, and that these were bad ideas that were extremely seductive, and it was a good thing that we had to go through that period to get to it. So we've moved on, but I'm not sure we haven't got still some leftover features of that model. In particular, I can't resist saying it. This is what Jerry Fuller would call a classical cognitive science model. Classical. I said to Jerry once, "You mean belongs in a glass case in a museum?" We've moved beyond classical cognitive science, but a feature that I sense in the current enthusiasm for predictive processing is that in both cases, what you have is fundamentally a normative theory. I've got a slide out of it. I have a question for Carl. How are beliefs individuated? And where does disinformation come in? But I'll just leave those hanging and go on. A normative theory used for descriptive modeling. Basically, Carl says, we have the underlying imperative is to minimize free energy. Right, in other words, these are the specs for a successful agent. Okay, but there's a big gap between the specs and the implementation of the specs. And the question for the classical model was, is deductive inference a good process for the implementation of what was a pretty good set of specs? I mean, if you've got consistent beliefs and you maintain truth and deduce the relevant theorems in the right order, then that would be just fine as an agent. It's just you can't do it. Okay. Jonathan Smallwood, one comment from him. He said you can't control what people are thinking about. And in spite of that, he's found some clever ways of doing some experiments to begin to sneak up on keeping track of what people are thinking about. But I think, in fact, that's a very important observation, which structures a lot of the research that can be done. Sarah Garfinkel, just a question for her. If you start the tone in sync with heartbeat and then speed it up, what happens to the subjects? This might even be an ethical issue, but I'm not sure. In other words, does the heart follow? And now finally he says predictive process is not a theory of consciousness. I agree with him, and I agree that that's a feature, not a bug. In the same way, biology is not a theory of life. In a way it is, but in another way it isn't. And it wouldn't be better if it was the theory of life. And if we had biologists going around asking what the necessary conditions for life were, the NCL, that would not be an improvement. His virtual reality experiments reminded me of a mythical experiment which I described in '91, which I've come to realize was almost certainly Gray Walter pulling my leg along with the legs of a lot of innocent Oxford undergraduates. This is the so-called precognitive carousel experiment, which claims to be done at the Verdun Institute in Bristol. And as far as we can tell, it was never done. It was just a thought experiment that he was pretending was a real experiment. But now, Seth and others have ways of looking at the same set of phenomena in real experiments, and I'm looking forward to seeing further results of that. And that's all I have to say.